David, we obviously just talked to Mendy about this as well, but from an organization's perspective, I know you look at far more than just the home run numbers from Alvarez. So what were you specifically looking for and then saw that told you it was time that he comes back up here?
I think first and foremost, we wanted to see how Alvy was going to respond to the challenge that we gave him when we sent him down. I've seen this go both ways. I've seen players sulk and ask, why is this happening? Why me? And then I've seen players turn the corner and look to get back and look to work and look to work with the instructors in a less pressurized environment. And from day one, when Alvy was there, that's what he did. He worked extremely hard. I think he understood and recognized that the way he was performing at the major league level on both sides of the ball was not who he was. And he took the opportunity away from the bright lights and the cameras and the pressure of a major league environment to work, and he improved very rapidly. This happened faster than I would have envisioned when we optioned him.
What were those things that you did see that he improved on as rapidly as he did?
It really was all facets of the game. I think we can start offensively. What has made Alvy such a special hitter is the threat of him going deep, of being able to hit the ball incredibly hard, hit it out to all parts of the field, not just pull power, but he can hit balls out to right center, to right field. And we lost that a little bit. And I think part of that was the work and the changes he went through in the offseason, combined with an abbreviated spring training and then immediately trying to get back into major league competition, I think was tough. And some of it was just, once you get some poor results at the major league level, you can spiral down some rabbit holes. And I think that's what happened. And then defensively, we just wanted him to get back to the fundamentals of who he was as a catcher. He's a very natural athletic catcher, and we may have gotten a little bit too, whether it's mechanical or thinking about every single thing. And if we could get him back to being an athletic, natural catcher, we thought that a lot could improve, and a lot did. I think we saw a better receiver throughout his time in the minor leagues. We saw a better blocker, and both of those things were great to see.
Howie?
Good try. Good try.
David, was there a point in the recent past when you might have thought about Alvy, okay, he's ready, and then gave him an extra week or handful of games or whatever it was to make sure that, you kind of were seeing what you thought you were seeing? Or did you have a time frame in mind where if he hit certain mileposts, he'd be good to go, in your opinion?
There wasn't a time frame. I think, frankly, it accelerated on us the weekend before the break. He had a great weekend before the break, and it seemed like a lot of things on both sides of the ball began to click. And then we had the opportunity internally to discuss it over the All-Star break and made the decision to let's see if we can keep this going for another series and reevaluate after yesterday. And he had a very good weekend, and so it made sense to get him back here now.
Did he have or need a period of time when he first went down to kind of come to grips with it? And do you allow that sort of transition period for a player in his situation?
I thought he was going to need that period of time. I expected him to need that period of time, and we were very willing to grant him that period of time. And then he showed up immediately to spring training wanting to get to work and asking, what can I do? How do I get back? And that was great to see. But, yeah, I was expecting look, players get 72 hours to report to AAA. I was expecting him to take 72 hours, and I would have given him a couple extra days to clear his head if he needed it. And he showed up immediately. So I think he expressed this, I think, when he was down at AAA. He was a little surprised, shocked at first, and then he got to work.
Now we'll go back to David.
Dave, you kind of answered this a little bit before, but you didn't activate him right after the All-Star break and just start the second half with him. How much of his readiness just happened to coincide with the fact that you guys can use his production at this point. I mean, he's down in the minor leagues.
Yeah.
Hitting a home run almost every other at bat. That had to be part of it, I would imagine, right? Considering where you guys at the major league level.
We really do try and tried in this case to make it what's best for the player, because what is best for Alvy in this case long term, and certainly for this year, is going to be best for our team as a whole. So I don't think the timing of this would have changed if we scored 30 runs over the weekend. I think we believe this is the right time. Doesn't mean he's going to hit a home run every day here, and doesn't mean he's going to be perfect behind the plate. But we think he's certainly demonstrated enough improvement that he deserves to be here, and he deserves to get some runway.
Tim?
You've obviously had some shuffling on your infield, especially the bottom half of your order lately. In your mind, is it desirable to, by the end of the season, have more set regulars at second and third and in center?
Not really. I think, look, it's desirable to have players continue to improve. We want to have good players. Ultimately, if you get to really good players or all-star caliber players, then yes, you sort of own your position, and we certainly have some of those on the roster, and so that would be wonderful if someone were to take a step forward and solidify himself as a really good everyday regular. Probably makes Mendy's job a little bit easier to make out the lineup card every day. From a roster construction standpoint, like, we have 26 roster spots, and we want to use them all. And if that means certain positions need to be timeshares, then certain positions will be timeshares.
And then how have you felt, a couple weeks ago you said the team defense hadn't been where you wanted it to be. How do you feel about where it is right now?
Yeah, so at times really good, and at times we make mistakes that cost us a little bit. We made a couple mistakes the other night by two pretty good defenders. Like, LT's been really good back there and made a mistake. I think Ronnie's been really good at third base, and he made a mistake, and we couldn't convert, and the combination of those two plays really impacted a game. And we tend to notice these things when they don't go well. I think for the most part, over the past couple weeks, we've been a better defensive team than we were previously.
Manny?
Just jumping back to Alvarez, it's easy for us to see how he's doing offensively. You see the home runs on the highlights and everything like that, but you also mentioned you saw improvements from him behind the plate. Can you specify what exactly did you see from him that he improved?
Yeah, I think the improvements behind the plate, frankly, were maybe more important for us to see than the offensive improvements. He immediately got to work on his receiving and blocking, and both of those were materially better, especially over the last, I'd say, week to 10 days in AAA than what we had seen previously.
And just with the trade deadline approaching, you guys have run into some bad luck. 5 guys, season-ending surgeries on the pitching staff. What are some areas that you are looking to perhaps improve as we get there?
Yeah, I think, first of all, we will improve our team. We like upgrades everywhere, and so I think we cast a pretty wide net, and we'll continue to do so. Specifically, you touched on we've been hit with injuries in the pitching staff, I think specifically the bullpen, and so we will be active there. And I think providing our group some reinforcements in the bullpen would be great. There are generally relievers traded at the deadline, and so I'm sure there will be some this as well, and we'll be involved in that. I think if, ideally, we'd find deals that we think make sense, bring guys in who we think can help us. If that doesn't happen for some reason, then we probably have to begin to think about some of the arms at AAA and whether those guys at some point can impact us in the bullpen. The challenge with doing that in season is once you do that, you can't reverse yourself in the same season. We can certainly reverse ourselves over the offseason, but once we shorten someone up to give them a chance to be a member of our pen, really tough to build them back up if you need them as a starter. And so we want to be very cautious if we're going to entertain that.
Tony?
Along the same lines, trade deadline, to what extent, if at all, do you feel like this team needs a major addition, like one of those quote-unquote big splashes, versus maybe something more along the lines of what you did last year, plugging holes around the roster?
Yeah, I try not to look at it as the size of the splash. I think that can get a little dangerous this time of year if we focus too much on the size of the splash. I think we try to look at it as like how good is the player coming back, and how does that particular player fit the team needs. And so I also don't know how many big splash players are actually going to get traded at this deadline. I think that remains to be seen a little bit. So we'll see. We got 10 days to go. There are still a number of teams that are trying to figure out where they are. And my guess is we will have a little bit more clarity on some of this, 6-7 days from now, with then 3 days leading into the deadline.
You mentioned pitching. What is your appetite or desire level to add offensively?
I look at our position player grouping, and for the most part, I'm pretty pleased with where we are. I think our younger players have taken a step forward. When we're talking about Brett Beatty and Ronnie Mauricio, both those guys have contributed. Positionally, the one position where we haven't gotten the level of production that we probably anticipated coming into the year is center field, and I don't think I'm saying anything that's going to surprise anyone. But I really like the defense that Tyrone Taylor brings and how he contributes to this team. And I also think Jeff is growing more comfortable out there. So I think for me at least, the bar to improve center field has probably risen over the past, let's say, 2 weeks, because of maybe Jeff's comfort level a little bit more out there, and also continuing to recognize the secondary skills that Tyrone can provide. So that's the obvious position, and I understand that. I'm certain we're going to be engaged, but we got to clear a bar that we actually think makes us better, given the price that I think these things are going to cost.
Abby?
Carlos described this period as sort of an evaluation period for some of the guys that you have in the bullpen, particularly the guys who have kind of gone back and forth between AAA and the big leagues. How would you evaluate the job that they've done so far?
We put those guys in tough spots. I mean, those are not easy jobs. You're on a plane at 6 a.m. You show up here sometimes for the first time, and we throw you right in a game at 7 p.m. And it's tough, and we've had to do that more than I would like over the past 2-3 weeks for sure. Some of that is because of injuries. Some of that's because we haven't pitched very well at times, and we've needed fresh arms. But those are tough jobs, and I think those guys have performed admirably in sometimes very difficult situations.
Have you seen, any sort of markets start to heat up, or are teams waiting until they kind of, figure out where they are in the standings
There are conversations, and so that's normal for 10 days out. It's also normal that it often doesn't get really serious until 2 or 3 days out as you get closer to the deadline. But there's industry conversation going on now for sure.
Dan?
David, you mentioned the offense in center field, but overall the depth of the lineup hasn't probably been as productive as you'd hoped over the last month or so. Is that something that you think can be fixed internally, or is that something that needs to be addressed as well?
So I might push back on that a little bit. I actually think the depth of our lineup over the last couple of weeks has been pretty good. We're turning the lineup over pretty nicely, I think. We have guys at the bottom of our lineup who are extending at bats, seeing pitches. I think the fair critique is we haven't scored runs. We've taken pretty good at bats. We're getting guys on base, and we haven't scored runs. And that goes back to a theme that we've talked about a lot here, which is getting those hits and executing with runners in scoring position, which has been a challenge for us all year. I don't have the answer for that. I wish I did. We'd have solved it, but I actually think the length of our lineup has been pretty good over the last, let's say, 2 to 4 weeks.
Jerry?
David, almost every contender has had an extended slump this year. We're seeing the Dodgers, the Tigers, the Astros. Only one team has 60 wins. Do you have a theory as to why no one's separated themselves yet? And does it make for a tougher deadline when there's so many teams jammed up near the top of the near the top of the game?
I don't know whether it's the fact that every contender has had the fact that every contender has had slips. I don't know if that's abnormal. I think I thought I saw Mr. Torrey somewhere here, maybe except for the '98. Mr. Torrey, maybe except for the '98 Yankees. I think the mortal teams have slips. Even the really good mortal teams have slips. So I don't know whether that's unusual. The deadline this year does feel a little bit more clumped, where there are teams that are trying to figure out now 10 days out which way they're going to go. But even over the next, let's say, week, I imagine that will separate as well.
Will?
Hey, David, so then at third base, whether it's a timeshare or somebody outright claiming that position, is it fair to say that you anticipate the group that you have, for the most part, being the people that you rely on for that position in the second half the rest of the way?
That would be my expectation.
Just, is there another move for Garcia today as well?
So Rico is not here. We claimed Rico. He's not here. So he'll report, and I imagine that'll happen over the next day or so.
Joe?
David, just to go back to Jeff for a second, if things play out a certain way, would you be comfortable seeing him getting the bulk of the playing time in center field for the next couple of months?
I think I'd be comfortable with the type of distribution we presently have. Some of that is because I think we've seen Jeff get a little bit more comfortable out there. And so if we continue to see that type of progress, I'd be comfortable with that.
Gary?
David, you raised the possibility, if things break a certain way, of using your AAA pitching prospects at this level at some point this season. Do you have any of your position player prospects that you feel the same way about?
I think on the position player side, more likely than not, it's the grouping that we've seen here. I think it's the grouping of our veterans and then the younger players who we've seen throughout. Right now, I think it's probably less likely that we see the position player prospect make an impact.
Mike?
David, this is a little bit of an industry-wide question, but it pertains specifically to you guys with Clay Holmes and his workload. A little bit of a unique situation because he was a reliever for a long time. Yeah. But you guys are far from the only contender with an important starting pitcher who's gone way over his innings from the previous year or career high innings or whatever. It seems that there used to sort of be an industry standard of like how many innings each year incrementally, and it seems like that's kind of changed, at least in the conversation. What are the things that you guys and other teams are looking at with pitchers like that, and how much has that conversation changed about how much a pitcher can increase his workload from one year to the next?
I think the reason why it's changed a little bit and we don't look at that either percentage increase or fixed innings increase is because it wasn't working. Guys were still getting hurt and it didn't appear to be particularly effective. I don't know that we've got it figured out now, where clearly pitchers are still getting hurt. I don't necessarily think it's because of workload increases. I think there might be some other dynamics there. But, I think more and more we're trying to treat each pitcher as an individual. And if a pitcher feels good, both subjectively and objectively, we try not to artificially shut them down. Clay, in his case, is a veteran. I think he's very honest with our performance staff and our medical staff. And so there's a lot of communication back and forth to ensure that we're doing everything we can to keep him in a good spot.
Tim?
Last year, and even in 18 in Milwaukee when you went to the NLCS, your team didn't have kind of the prototypical number one or shutdown starter. I'm wondering how valuable in the current landscape that player is compared to maybe prior generations, and whether we kind of overinflate it in the popular imagination.
So I still think it's really valuable, and there have been teams that I've been around in my career that have had one or multiple ace level starters on their staff and got bounced early in the playoffs, and is tough. That can be tough to figure out sometimes too. So you'd always like to have, the horse at the front of the rotation. There's no question. but it's not the only way to build a rotation. It's not the only way to win a playoff series. It's not the only way to win a World Series. I think we have multiple pitchers on our staff right now in that grouping of 5 who can lead a staff into a playoff series. I'm confident of that. I'm comfortable with that. We need to keep building those guys up. We need to keep those guys healthy. But I think from a talent perspective, we have guys on our staff right now that can lead us into a postseason series.
Mark.
David, you mentioned the possibility of shortening up your AAA guys, but obviously, like, you want to be sure that they're going to be relievers at that point. I guess just with Sproat and McLean, just given their AAA numbers, is there a desire to get them here at some point this year to see what they can do?
I don't think we have to. I think for any prospect, it's a combination of where they are in their developmental progression and where the team need is. Both those guys, I think, over the last 3 weeks have taken meaningful steps forward in their development. And I'm excited to see where it goes from here. And if there is a need, I think either of those guys could be ready over the next couple months.
Lloyd.
Since we are 10 days out, I'm just curious if, given high payrolls for small market teams, have any of them been calling you kind of using a variation of the old Hedy Youngman line, take my players, please, just to,
No, I think, no, the answer is no. I think teams are trying to win right now. If anything, I've gotten the opposite from certain teams, that some sellers would be more open to paying down a player to get better prospect return than having other teams take the money. So I have not gotten that impression.
Thank you very much, David.
Thanks.
We're very honored to have Baseball Hall of Famer and former Mets manager